Right, but it was a good.
Does help.
See what I see.
I appreciate it. I'm just not. You're done, bro.
Maybe it's not. I can't tell what
You're right.
it's.
Did I forget?
So maybe
Like having.
Thank you. I hope, because.
You know, my life, I feel not big enough. Wanted to share. Right. Yeah. One more. Is there any word? Any word on Jennifer's status?
She is here today. For that, but I think she's.
Good.
And Jen DC.
Are we good?
Or
Are we
she was
recording?
DC for a number of years.
We'll now call this meeting to order. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic, nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice. And will you please call the roll?
Mr. Alcorn,
Present.
Ms. Begley,
Present.
Ms. Bailey. Present. Mr. Banks,
Present.
Ms. Bomke, Ms. Franklin,
President.
Ms. Garvey, Ms. Hayes,
Present.
Mr. Kelly,
Here.
Ms. Lawson,
Here.
Mr. Smith, Stork, Mr. Walkinshaw,
Here.
Ms. Young. Here. Mr. McLaughlin.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Mr. Banks and Ms. Lawson have requested to participate in the meeting remotely. Mr. Banks requested so due to being out of town, and Ms. Lawson due to illness. For the VRE Operations Board Electronic Participation Policy, I need a motion and a second to allow Mr. Banks and Ms. Lawson to participate electronically.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Kelly, seconded by Supervisor Bailey. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We'll now move into agenda item 3, the safety briefing. I'll turn it over to Mr. Dalton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just, and we do have some new members in the room, so just from a space familiarity and an overall safety awareness, in the event that we need to evacuate this space, we have 2 evacuation routes. One's going to be out this door, and then one's going to be out the door. Most of you entered from the front, okay? There are evacuation routes posted, but maybe get familiar with those if you're not already familiar with them. We'll point out that if we do evacuate the space through the, I'll just call it the front door there, and there is an elevator. We will not take the elevator, we'll take the stairs. And also adjacent to the elevator out there is a AED device out there. I am going to, from a VRE staff perspective, I'm going to ask John Duque right over here. He will be our primary 911 caller. So if we need first responders up here, John will be the primary. Cindy Bullock in the back will be our secondary. And then from an AED CPR standpoint, let me just get a show of hands, everybody that's certified, qualified. Okay. So Joe, if you'll take primary, and Joe Schwartz in the back, and Mark Schofield, if you'll take secondary. I will also point out, again, if you're not familiar with those evacuation routes, you're probably more familiar with the primary. But if you get a chance, also get familiar with the side one as well. It's clearly marked and there's some stairwells. If you get a chance, just get familiar with that space as well. So that's the end of my safety briefing.
Any questions for Mr. Dalton? We'll move into item 4, approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any amendments to the agenda? Is there a motion? By Supervisor Bailey, is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion passes. We'll now move into item 5, approval of the minutes from December 17th, 2021. Does anyone have any corrections or amendments to the minutes?
Move approval of minutes as submitted.
Moved by Mr. Kelly, seconded by Mr. Alcorn. Is there any discussion? If you're new, feel free to abstain. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Item passes.
Madam Chair,
Okay.
Madam
Yeah.
Chair,
We'll now move into chair's comments.
Madam
Good
Chair.
morning. Seeing as we're starting the new year with several new operation board members, I thought it would be appropriate to go around the room and do some very quick introductions, and I'll start with myself. Margaret Franklin, supervisor from the Woodbridge District on the Prince William County Board of Supervisors. Been on the board for about 2 years now. Previously served as chair of OmniRide and now obviously serving as chair of VRE. Looking forward to meeting all of our new members and looking forward to connecting with some of our past members. I'll turn it over now to Vice Chair Walkinshaw.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is James Walkinshaw. I've served on the VRE and NVTC boards for 2 years. I represent the Braddock District on the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors and famous for many things in the Braddock District, but most importantly, Sharon Bulova, the mother of VRE. So I'm excited to especially welcome our new member.
Walter Alcorn, I'm also on the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors. I represent the Hunter Mill District, and this is also starting my 3rd year on the VRE operation.
Garvey, I'm on the Arlington County Board. First got on the board about 10 years ago. I think I served here for a while. About 5 years ago, I've been on the PC board for about 5 years. I can go back and check exactly if anybody really wants to know. Very pleased.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our new board members. It's an exciting board. I'm Andrea Bailey, Supervisor Andrea Bailey, serve the Potomac District in Prince William County. And I've not been on this board before, but it's the best board and in conclusion of PRTC OmniRide. And I'm serving, going into my 3rd term on the board in Prince William County. Again, welcome.
Hi, I'm Michael McLaughlin.
3rd year, excuse me, it's your term.
I'm Michael McLaughlin. I am the Chief Operating Officer at the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority. Some of you might not even know what it is. It's new. We just had our first staff last April. Although I have been an alternate on this board and from time, sometimes I'll be the primary person. Oftentimes I am the primary person from the Commonwealth of Virginia. Because I was formerly the Chief of Rail at the Department of Rail and Public Transportation. VPR broke off. Like I said, started last year. The board, which Rich is a member of, started in October of 2020. We were created because the lawyers told us it was best to do so once we started acquiring rail property and track from CSX, and we have another deal with Norfolk Southern as well. So if any new board members or existing board members want briefings on that, I'll be happy to do it. Although Rich knows the background too. So happy to sit down with anyone to talk about it. Jennifer Mitchell may be here later. She is the director of DRPT. And just a note, VPRA does not change with the administration. So I will continue to, you'll probably continue to see me as your face here as the changes in the administration. They're appointed by the board members who are appointed by the governors in a roundabout way.
Schneider, Executive Director of Potomac and Rappahannock Transportation Commission. You see our buses as OmniRide. We are one of the two parent commissions, which are the co-owners of VRE. Although technically we own it, all responsibility and all issues we defer to VRE and work very closely with them and support them in activities, coordinate safety programs, marketing campaigns, and work closely with our co-commissioner.
Pete McIsaac on VRE Community Council, the council to MVTC and PRTC on stuff. Council since began back in the 80s. Spent most of my life in local government. Full-time.
Morning, my name is Alan Fye with the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission. I'm sitting in today for Kate Mattice, our Executive Director. As Bob said, co-owners of VRE work very closely with everybody here, especially on the staff as well. I'm managing the funding, marketing, and other things related.
Matt Kelly, City Councilman in the City of Fredericksburg at large, been on the council 18 years, served with VRE and PRTC for 16 years.
I'm Lori Hayes. I'm Spotsylvania County Lee Hill District Supervisor. Gary Skinner was my predecessor, and I'm happy to be here.
Morning all, Sarah Bagley. I recently elected to the Alexandria City Council. Recently joined NVTC, attended my first meeting earlier this month, and I'm excited to be here and participate. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dan Stark. I represent the Mount Vernon District on the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors. It's just across the Occoquan River, runs pretty much up the way along the Potomac River. This is my starting my third year on this board, and I am the alternate to the NVTC. Welcome.
Pamela Young. I used to live here in Prince William for 13 years before I moved to Stafford. School board member for 4 years, and newly elected Board of Supervisors and also Vice Chair.
Hi, I'm Leslie Lamb. I'm the Executive Assistant at VRE, and I'm can be one of your main points of contact if you need anything, if you need any materials or information. But you'll be seeing information from me on a pretty regular basis. Welcome to our new members.
Okay, we'll do Mr. Dawson last, but can we get staff to introduce themselves? Maybe, yep, Mr. Schofield.
Morning, I'm Mark Schofield, Chief Financial Officer for VRE. Been 5 years, and I actually grew up in the district well before Mr. Walker. I'm Joe Swartz. I'm the Director of Government. 8 years.
Morning, I'm Robert Hostelka. I'm the Director of Information Security and Technology for VRE. IT, cybersecurity, and operations.
Cindy Bullock. I joined VRE 6.5 months, not years, ago as the Chief Administrative Officer.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Henry. I'm the Director of Rail Operations for VRE. I am about 10 days short of 12. So 12 years starting February 1st. So, welcome, everyone. And I know Rich is going to talk about system tours and stuff, and we really invite you to see the system.
John Duque, Senior Systems Engineer in the IT Department. I've been with VRE for 15 years.
I believe we have Ms. Lawson and Mr. Banks online if they want to introduce themselves. Starting with Ms. Lawson.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to get remotely.
If you can unmute yourself. Supervisor Lawson, we can see you, but we can't hear you. Actually, we can't see you either, but.
It
You
froze now.
Okay, I think you're frozen. We'll come back to you. Vice Mayor Banks.
Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Mr. Banks, we can't hear you either, so maybe we'll just come back to you all once we get the system. Ready?
Ms. Lawson, she can hear us. Ms. Lawson, can you hear us?
Yes.
Can we work on that in case they have questions? All right, we'll come back to you all. Mr. Dawson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Rich Dalton, I'm the Chief Executive Officer for VRE. And let me see, I lived 1 year in Woodbridge. I can't remember what district. Over by the Ripon Station, right? So I lived there. And then I lived, 6 years in Spotsylvania County. And the last 6 years, I don't live in anybody's jurisdiction table. So, sorry. Anyway, I've been at VRE for, I'm pushing on my 13th year. As most of you know, prior to being appointed the Chief Executive Officer, I was the Deputy Chief Executive Officer and Chief Operating Officer. I've actually been affiliated previous to VRE. I worked for a worldwide supplier of all things as it relates to stuff, and actually sort of cut my teeth on the first series of locomotives and to some degree passenger rail cars for VRE when VRE first started. I was much taller then, but that was in the early 90s. So been essentially involved one way or other with VRE for 30 years. We're going on our 30th anniversary this year. And I did also want to say, pick up off of what Chris said, I know I've communicated to the new members about new member orientations and system tours, but I'm going to open that back up to all of the regular members. As you recall, some of you can, and then of course we went into COVID and we sort of restricted that. So I'll be reaching out actually to everybody again and see if we can't, if the orientation piece doesn't work for you, but at least the system tour piece may work for you as well. So we'll be really, the next couple of months, myself and staff, trying to get everybody out there, at least riding VRE train and seeing the system. I dare say that we hope it gets warmer sooner, but hey, let's just go do it, and we'll just all have to wear a coat. So thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome, everybody.
Can we get back to Ms. Banks or Mr. Banks or Ms. Lawson, or should we move on? Okay, all right, we'll move on. We'll also be announcing committee assignments for 2022 at the February meeting. If you're interested in serving on any of the committees shown, Finance Committee, the Legislative Committee, the Audit and CEO Evaluation Committees, please reach out to me directly. We'll have that discussion, and then in February, we'll officially set up committee assignments. All right, we do have an electronic participation policy review. The VRE Operations Board members may participate in meetings electronically, provided the reasons for doing so. Notifications of the request to participate electronically shall be provided by the member seeking to participate remotely to the applicable chair. With notification copy to the VRE Chief Executive Officer and the Secretary at the earliest practical time, but not later than 2 hours before the meeting start time. The request can be made verbally, but should be followed up in writing as soon as possible. The member requesting to participate electronically shall provide sufficient specificity as to the nature of the matter as it is necessary for the chair and the operations board, which must approve the request at the start of the meeting to determine whether the circumstances warrant remote participation. Electronic participation for personal reasons is limited to 3 times per calendar year. Any questions about electronic participation?
Does it usually work? Okay.
Yeah, it does. It usually works well.
Yeah, I'm probably
Now we'll move into agenda item 7, the CEO's report. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Dalton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First up, our safety update. You'll notice at the beginning, we do make some assignments, and of course, those that are qualified CPR AED, we actually go through training for this event. So in the month of December and January, our staff did, majority of our staff did attend CPR AED and first aid training. The courses are provided through the American Red Cross. But this time around, it was done somewhat in a hybrid format. So staff participated on via an online tutorial, and then did a practical skills test at a place that was convenient for staff. And of course, to some degree, it was challenging. This is our director of rail operations that you met earlier. This is his motion picture. But as you can see, Chris did it in his office, and other people did the practical skills test, even at home, I think, in some cases. So just wanted to highlight that. Moving on, monthly ridership for the month of December was lower than previous months, primarily due to the holiday season, and frankly, that's about the time I think Omicron hit a lot of our folks in this region as well. So compared to previous months, slightly down. And of course, average daily ridership was reflected there as well. On-time performance, we exceeded our target of 90%. And so, as you know, for the months that were below our target, I do provide some more granular detail, but since we're above our target, not going to provide that this time. Glad to discuss any relative issues as it relates to on-time performance. But again, good month from a reliability standpoint. Thought I'd go ahead and interject here in my comments. I'm going to ask Joe Schwartz to come up and give us an update on specifically the state legislative update, and more specifically the items that we're tracking, and of course invite any kind of discussion that we need to have at this point. So, Mr. Schwartz, the floor is yours, sir.
Good morning again. So I'm assuming in all of your other positions, you're also getting legislative updates. So I'm going to stay very focused on VRE items so you don't have to hear the same things. Of course, things are hot and heavy down there now. One of the things on our legislative agenda had to do with Freedom of Information Act, doing meetings such as this, there were electronic meetings. Our former chair, Delegate Bennett Parker, put a bill in, companion bill in the Senate from Mr. Pike that would allow board meetings like this to take place virtually with everybody virtually, even in times when there isn't an emergency. Currently, if there's a state of emergency, you can do that, but they want to change that. You'd be able to do that up to 3 times a year. So we're tracking that, and we'll be in support of that. There's a lot of Freedom of Information Act things going on this year, more than I recall from other years. A few things that we're keeping an eye on is changing the definition of what a official government website is. Apparently, there was a case, and they have decided that an official government website has to be .gov. So there is legislation to change that so that it's any government website that's run by a government organization, which is good because our website is .org, not .gov. And what we'd have to go through to change ours over to a different website. Let's see. One of the other items we have on the our agenda is the ship on the Passenger Rail Authority. Currently, both PRTC and MVTC can give a list of potential board members to the governor, but the governor does not have to pick from that. We have legislation in, again, Parker put that in for us, that would require that he pick from the list that both MVTC and PRTC gives him. We'd have to give him up to 6 names, or no, at least 6 names, and then he would pick off of him. Have to pick off of that list. Let's see. We are tracking a couple procurement-related items. One in particular, we need a little more information on, but it seems like it may restrict that we currently have to do a lot of our larger engineering contracts. That was introduced by Senator McPike, so we're going to reach out to his office and get a little more intent. And then I saved the fun ones for last. The motor fuels tax. I'm sure you've all heard about the motor fuels tax. There are basically 2 types of bills out there. There's one that would repeal the regional gas tax, the gas tax that's collected in MVTC and PRTC and other areas. At MVTC, a lot of that funding goes to WMATA. WMATA has bonded on that revenue. The I-81 area also collects regional gas taxes. They have bonded on that funding. HR TAC down in Hampton Roads collects regional gas taxes. They have bonded on that. And of course, we are in the process of looking to bond the CROC money, which comes from that regional gas tax as well. So there is a lot of opposition to this bill. It sounds like it's not going to go very far because of opposition, but we will track it and on how it would affect us both at MVTC and PRTC and specifically. Now, the other one has to do with the statewide gas tax. Last year on July 1st, the statewide gas tax went up by a nickel. There is a bill that would repeal that for 1 year. So July 1st of this year, take that nickel away, but only for a year, give it back a year, and we'd go from there. So estimates that we're hearing from VDOT is that would be a loss of about $200 million in that year of transportation revenue, which they are saying they can easily make up with the federal funding that they've gotten. So they don't believe that it's going to necessarily affect the transportation programs in the state. Of course, it's still less funding for transportation than there could be. So there's opposition to this, not quite as much as there was for the as there is for the regional gas tax, but we're keeping an eye on that. It would affect the funding that both DRPT and other agencies get that we work and look. Let's see. And there's a myriad of other transportation related bills. Most of them, other agencies or other jurisdictions in the region would be taking the lead, things having to do with MBTA, things having to do with other regional agencies. So we're keeping an eye on them, and we have a meeting actually once a week with legislative liaisons from all of your jurisdictions and from MBTA and other organizations. We coordinate how we're going to track these bills and who's going to be the point person for them, and come up with a consensus on how we're going to do these bills. So for the most part, the bills have been assigned to committees at this point, but they haven't been heard. So it's next week we're to actually having to get in front of committees and give our opinion on these bills. I am happy to answer any questions.
Again, just want to point out the regional fuels tax is something that's going to be incredibly important to transportation, as mentioned. So just keep your eye on those developments. But any questions for Mr. Schwartz? Ms. Garvey?
How are the governor's appointments coming?
So you may have heard that Shep Miller, who was on the CTB, has been appointed Secretary of Transportation. They also appointed a Deputy Secretary of Transportation, Jen Deasy, who actually used to work for MVTC. She's a longtime Hill staffer. I know her very well, as do most of the people from MVTC. We have a great working relationship with her. She knows VRE and VRE's issues, and I think she'll be helpful as administration. Mike?
One quick point on Jen as well. You mentioned she's a Hill staffer. She helped write federal transit law. She was a Senate staff on the banking committee, and it's odd, but the banking committee in the Senate oversees transit. So she was basically the Senate's transit staffer and wrote a lot of laws that we abide by now. She's going to have, I think, a great help with regard AJA money, the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act, for all the Commonwealth. As you can see, I'm excited about it. I know her as well. She's a familiar face.
Madam Chair,
I will go to Mr. Kelly and then Ms. Lawson.
thank you.
Just trying to look it up very quickly. Can you give me in a nutshell the rationale for the legislation to eliminate the regional gas tax and drop the fuel tax for revenue for a year? And what do you see the impact is with regards to efforts to set up regional transportation authorities in the future?
So I will not speak for the rationale for
Well,
any of the bills.
We got a general assembly.
I would say, you know, the easiest answer is it was I wouldn't even say it was that big of a deal during the election, but the governor did make sort of an offhand comment about lowering gas tax. And I believe this is an attempt to sort of ask something that he can say, see, I said it and now we've done it. I suppose the argument is to keep the economy running. With more money in their pocket and therefore lower taxes for a year.
The regional gas tax?
I believe I think it's the same rationale.
So business as usual. And so I'm assuming then if we're going to see more of this moving forward with regional transportation authority not in them, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to bring that concept forward.
I think you're probably correct there. The creation of additional transportation authorities is battle environment.
Ms. Lawson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sounds like I have audio now. Is that right?
That's correct.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the new members of the VRE Ops Board. Or to meet you in person next month. Joe, Leslie, I tried to abstain from the minutes since I was absent in December, so will you mark me as an abstention on that vote?
Yes, Ms. Lawson, I certainly will.
Thank you. Joe, I'm curious, who is carrying the bill to repeal all the regional gas taxes?
Let's see. The suspension of regional fuels tax was carried by Delegate McNamara.
I don't even know who that is.
I can't say that I know off the top of my head what region it's from.
Okay. You know, if it was, I'm asking because if it was a member with a lot of influence, that would be very, telling. But no offense to Delegate McNamara, but I don't know that name. Doesn't mean it's not going to go anywhere, but as everybody around the table knows, a lot of it depends on who's carrying the bill.
Mr. Snyder just mentioned me. He thinks he was from the Roanoke area.
Okay, thank you.
They do not have a regional tax, by the way.
Any other questions for Mr. Schwartz? Supervisor Bailey?
Thank you. Yeah, hold on, okay. I just wanted to, I may have missed it because I stepped out of the room. Do you meet with the legislative liaison? Did you mention that you may have?
Yeah, we have a weekly meeting, and then there's one-on-one conversations, but with all the legislative liaisons from the Northern Virginia area.
You've had an opportunity, Mr. Luke. Does that ring a bell?
That name doesn't ring a bell, but I've been doing them on video.
Okay.
And it's, there's a bunch of them that are in the room in Richmond and a bunch of us on video, so I may just not have seen it.
It's okay, as long as you're meeting us. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Chair Franklin, I'm sorry I spoke before without asking. Well, you also want to mention that Shep Miller, the new transportation secretary, was a Commonwealth Transportation Board member and had supported the agreements that we brought to them a couple of years ago with regard to expanding rail in Virginia. I'm not saying that's going to predict what he's thinking in the future, but he was on the Commonwealth Transportation Board and purchase rail property and to expand service. That I took his appointment as a very.
Very important. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Schwartz? Supervisor Bailey?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. And just, again, please forgive me for asking you to repeat. Jennifer, she extended, correct, or
She has been asked to stay on,
continuity?
but I believe it's expected, I don't know, Mike, you might know more than me. It's expected that she will not be the permanent director, but she's staying on for a while, yes. And in fact, she is here and she will be in a little bit later, so she may be able to give you a little more information on
Yeah,
that.
I just asked that in terms of the continuity, transition. Thank you.
We'll now turn it back to Mr. Dalton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In front of you, you'll see, for those that are in the room, in front of you, you'll see an annual report placed in front of you. We will provide this electronically to all members. It'll actually be posted on our website, but wanted to give you a hard copy of an annual report. Some levels, this is meant to be somewhat complementary to our annual financial report that you would have received last month, but this is something that our staff wanted to resurrect, if you will, something that we haven't done as a staff for many years. So just wanted to point that out. It's not heavy on the financial stuff because we already have a report that does that. But this is a nice recap of calendar year 2021. Take time, review it. Staff would love to have any feedback from you on potentially could be included in next year's version for 2020. Just want to point that out. And then finally, Madam Chair, following the approval by the commissions in December, we are proceeding with the next steps in the CROC backed debt issuance. And just as a reminder to some and maybe new information to others, that the proceeds from this issuance will be used to assist the Passenger Rail Authority in purchase of the CSX right-of-way as part of our funding agreement with the Rail Authority. So one thing is, as we noted throughout the debt issuance process, the CROC funds will be backed by only by CROC bonds will be backed by the revenues or CROC revenues with no recourse to the Commonwealth, the commissions, or any individual jurisdiction. However, working with our bond counsel, we have determined that the language in the VRE master agreement requires each individual jurisdiction to approve any VRE debt issuance, even this one. So you'll be receiving a memo next week that explains this requirement in greater detail. This memo will also be distributed to NVTC and PRTC commission members, key elected officials and staff members of each jurisdiction. And then once we send the memo out, or once it's been circulated, our finance and legal team will begin coordinating directly with your jurisdiction. So you'll see this as part of action to be acted upon at your individual jurisdiction. So just wanted to give you a heads up verbally today. And then, like I said, the memo that we send out next week will get into some specifics on that. And again, it circles back to ensuring that we are meeting the requirements of the VRE master agreement. So That is the end. Share my report.
Any questions for Mr. Dawson, Mr. Stork?
Yeah, I just was wondering, Mr. Dalton, could, in your report, you could identify the items that have changed in the capital projects update? Looking through it, many of the project notes are the same as previous report. So I end up having to go through the whole thing, and if you could maybe have them highlighted in another color or something, just what's different. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Ms. Garvey?
It's kind of cool at the back of the report, this animated Long Bridge. It's not there yet. I mean, I assume, I don't know if you want to talk. Kind of just let, I mean, I guess the more we visualize it, the more likely it is to happen. Is that? It's great.
Yes, to answer, well, it's also to give you a visual, as you recall, of course, at that level, you know, we did receive authorization, and then subsequently in the calendar year 2021, execute a funding agreement, other agreements with the rail authority, agreements with CSX, many elements to those agreements, but at the end of the day, any type of expansion, any kind of enhancement to not just VRE service or primarily VRE service, but passenger service, it just hinges on that long bridge. So we just chose to add that as a
It's great.
vision.
I was kind of stuck. Not that unusual, but
Mr. Kelly?
Can we just give for the new members, I know we're over 90% on time performance, but maybe the top 3 or 4 when we deal with, it comes up at meetings regularly, what the cause of the major cause of delays are and which ones are our responsibility, usually breakdowns, excess equipment, and how much of it is really system issues that we have, not a lot.
Yes, I can do that now. Is that your?
Just a quick.
Sure. So good point. We, VRE as a commuter rail operation, of course, we own our own equipment. The commission's on, you know, locomotives, passenger rail cars, and maintenance and storage facilities. So you can look at that, anything dealing with maintenance and storage facilities or equipment, those are things that we have some direct control over. We do, however, operate over host railroads, and technically we have 4 now. We have CSX, we have Norfolk Southern, we have Amtrak, and the Rail Authority. VRE pays an access fee to access those railroads, but the host railroads, with a slight exception, the Rail Authority doesn't maintain their own right-of-way. In this case, CSX does. But so the host railroads do all of the maintenance away activities, including rail repairs, communications and signaling. And so we are essentially only as reliable as they are, in a sense, right? So, and then that would be on the infrastructure side. We do, of course, operating in a mixed freight passenger network. And when you add commuter rail to it, we essentially operate at various velocities, which when you intermix passenger trains and freight trains together, it can cause and does cause congestion. So all of that to say is that to Mr. Kelly's point is a lot of the reliability issues. I'm not going to suggest that we don't have issues ourselves. Sometimes we have mechanical issues with passenger rail cars, but a lot that we deal with is congestion out on the rail line. And some of that's just simply because other trains other than VRE are out of slot. But we also deal with, you know, issues that are weather related. And frankly, in the summertime, we also deal with issues that, from a maintenance away standpoint, we deal with congestion caused because that is the preferred time to do this on the railroad. So I would say the top categories are really congestion. And a lot of what we talk about with transforming rail in Virginia allows the construction and addition of additional infrastructure out there, i.e. the Long Bridge, additional 3rd track, in some cases 4th track sidings and stuff to increase the capacity out there such that we can minimize that overall congestion with the ultimate goal of transforming railroad Virginia, not ultimate, maybe a near-term goal of separating freight and passenger service. So freight that operates at a couple of different velocities and passenger and commuter service that operates at some higher velocities would minimize that congestion. So, but I will say a plug for the new member orientation and system tours. When we get set up there, we can get into a lot of those types of details, and you can see things yourself on how some of those congestion issues rise on us.
Ms. Young and then Ms. Garvey.
Thank you so much, board member Kelly, for bringing that up. But as a new member, I'm wondering if I should have studied up on VRE before I got here. I wrote VRE because I used to slug up to the city, Glebe, and Washington D.C. plus years, so I'm a slugger. But every so often when I did write a VRE, so my question for you as new members, what and where is your VRE mission and vision statement, and how it works would have been a nice introduction to tell us why we're here, and the reason why I want to be part of this is because I'm interested to know what our goal is and how you plan on increasing ridership to take some folks off of the road. I think that's very important because I'm hearing about finances and funding, and all that is great, but I would like to know what that vision is and how you plan on increasing ridership and making sure that's communication out there for people to know that it's available, because I know who's always on the VRE, and I would love to see just regular people coming all the way down and be able to get back up wherever.
Yeah, and then maybe, Mr. Dawson, if you can take a quick, 30 few seconds to just go over some of the challenges we faced with COVID as it relates to ridership, because we have a pretty dedicated ridership, but with COVID, that's dropped off significantly. So maybe you just spend literally just like under a minute kind of talking about that and how that's impacted ridership.
Okay, let me go back to, your first point first. So as part of that new member orientation, we conveyed a lot of information to you, but to get into some of that granular detail stuff, that's our intent with that new member. So and then to have further discussion. We like to be respectful of the fact that as a new member, you're likely getting a lot of things from different direction and stuff. So try to pace that a little bit, but look forward to obviously scheduling that with you to get into some of those details and stuff. As it relates though to, ridership and the recovery of ridership, that'll be something that I will continue actually in a lot more detail, briefing the entire board as the next months come along, as we are, have been updating our plans. Our plans continue to, I'll just say, change to some degree, depending on particularly what the federal government's doing, in part what the federal government's doing. So, and just to back into, share what you'd asked, prior to the pandemic, our average daily ridership was about 18,500 average daily riders. And, within the first couple of weeks, actually about the first week of the pandemic, we'd lost about 95% of our ridership. Not unlike any other, unlike other transportation providers in the region, but it hit us hard. About 70% of our ridership is predominantly from the federal government and the military, if you will. So, and so we, over time, as you saw in the numbers, we're 80%, slightly, kind of ebb and flows a little bit, but we're still about 80% down of what we were previously. So again, I'll just say that we do have a ridership recovery team meets weekly, and there'll be more information forthcoming in some level of detail as we go. That wasn't 1 minute, I'm sorry.
Ms. Garvey and then Supervisor Bailey.
Yeah, so I'm thinking I probably need to take this up when I get my tour. I was just struck by the fact that the host railroads, handle the signaling and stuff. So it was actually where I was heading with cybersecurity. So I'll go, so the whole system, there's a lot that could either, an accident or a bad actor. I'll just be curious, because I assume there's some cooperation, because the system would go out. Those railroads don't. But yeah, I'll just ask about that when I'm on my.
Supervisor Bailey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say just briefly, thank you, Board Member Kelly for, I know how my friend Pam thinks as well. Your questions will be answered in orientation. And you will have the audience to really delve into it deeper, because I know for me, it was a little uncomfortable, but this team is very, very good in ushering you into the process, being a board member and getting your questions answered. I just want to give you that kind of warm and fuzzy. Okay.
We'll take one more question, Mr. Kelly.
Last comment, for the new members, before your orientation, it might not be a bad idea to go online and look at our 2040 systems plan. That'll give you a brief, what we're looking at between now and 2040. It kind of lays everything out, what we're looking for, what we're going at, and also probably generate some questions for you when you have your orientation. You can walk right into what the future plans of the organization.
Move into public comment time. Agenda item 8. VRE accepts public comments both in person and electronically via the VRE website. Members of the public wishing to make public comments have 3 minutes and should state their full name and the jurisdiction they live in. And written comments submitted before 8:00 a.m. this morning will be forwarded to the members of the board, read into the minutes, and attached to the official minutes. Do you have any members of the public who would like to address the board? And do we have any electronic public comments?
We have no electronic.
We'll move into action item or agenda item 9, which are our action items. Have 3. First is the authorization to issue a GEC 8 task order for construction management services for Fredericksburg Station Rehabilitation Project. I'll turn over to Mr. Dalton for a summary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Operations Board is asked to authorize the CEO to issue a GEC services task order to STV Incorporated for construction management services for the Fredericksburg Station Rehabilitation Project in the amount stated in the resolution, plus a contingency for a total amount not to exceed $655,774. Just quickly in summary, the design for the rehabilitation project is essentially complete, and bring the construction management services on board. We'll finalize the solicitation for the construction for this project. So we hope to within the next couple of months go through that solicitation project. So with construction type activity starting out there late spring, early summer. So that is my summary, Madam.
Okay, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I would be happy to move the motion, and I want to thank Rich and his staff. This has been an ongoing discussion since I've been on this, so I'm really happy quickly we kicked into gear. I make the motion to approve.
Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Garvey. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item passes. All right, we'll now move into action item 9B, authorization to issue a GEC 8 task order for design for audio video infrastructure for the variable messaging screen system. Mr. Dalton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're seeking authorization from the Operations Board to execute a task order to HDR Engineering Incorporated of Vienna, Virginia, for the design of audio video infrastructure for the variable messaging screen system in the amount stated in the resolution, plus a contingency for a total amount not to exceed $771,070. So just to take a step back, for the for the new members, particularly, about 2 years ago, we started a proof of concept for an updated system. And then this system, you've been out at our stations, or heck, if you've been at an airport or something, you go in and you look up to see what time your trains come in our case. We've had a legacy system out there. We initially implemented that in the late 2000s. Obviously, it's out of date. And so, but back to what we did a couple of years ago, we stood up a proof of concept at the Alexandria station and at the Fredericksburg station. Worked directly with Amtrak at both locations, and in addition, at the Alexandria station with others like DART. And so this enhanced system essentially will be able to provide at the VRE stations the ability for passengers to effectively, if it's a VRE train, if it's an Amtrak train, or even if there's some other bus connections or any other kind of mobility connections, it will all get displayed at once. But in order to do that, this task order will permit some field work by an engineering team at 17 of the 19 stations. Keep in mind, we've done the proof of concept at 2 of those. So at 17 stations, the average cost is about $40,000 at each station, some higher, some lower, depending on the level of work. So this will actually map everything out for us and essentially give us the documentation we need to go out and do a solicitation and have a contractor come in and install the system for us. That's my summary, Madam.
For there's motion, is there any questions for Mr. Dalton? Mr. Walkinshaw?
Just curious, Rich. I mean, one, just kind of my initial reaction, $700,000 seems like a lot of money. It's a complex thing, I guess. So maybe you can elaborate on that. But you just elaborate a little bit more on from the rider's perspective. What do we ultimately hope the improvements to be? Because as someone who's used, seen, it seems to work from a rider's perspective right now. So what will ultimately, hopefully, be better when we get the design and implementation of the new system?
So let me thank you, Supervisor Walkinshaw. Let me go back. You're right. You look at the total amount here. It's my first reaction as well. But again, there is specific work that needs to be done at all stations. So that's why I provided that. It's about an average of about 40,000. First of all, from a rider, what does a rider get out of this? One of the elements, and I didn't mention, it is in the background, is that we're going to take this opportunity also and basically review our ADA accessibility routes and ensure that any upgrade that we do either meets or exceeds those as it relates to audio visual messaging as it relates to the ADA compliance piece. So there's a chunk of that is above and beyond simply identifying data routes, electrical routes, that type of stuff. And so also, and I'm going to use, I'll use Fredericksburg as a good example of an advantage to a rider. And I know our team can attest to this, and Mr. Kelly can attest to this as well, is that at a station like Fredericksburg, where you have both Amtrak and VRE coming in that station, what the new system does is that it orientates a passenger to which track the train comes in on. And it was historically an issue at the Fredericksburg station. As you can imagine, passengers would be on one track and then the Amtrak train would come in on the other track. So we're trying to bridge that, correct that. That's actually at Alexandria, Fredericksburg, and other stations that are jointly served. And then, like I said, for stations that actually have other mobility connections, we're tying in the respective GTFS feeds into the system so they can be displayed visually to them as well. So it's definitely an enhancement from what
Any other questions? Ms. Bailey and then, Ms. Bagley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and pardon my naivete, but just in reference to that, because I agree that number is kind of large. Does this have to do with upgrade of some regulations as it applies to the ADA as well? Is that encompassed into what we need to do this? Or does it have anything to do with it?
To answer your question, our system right now meets the current ADA regulation. There are opportunities for us, frankly. I mean, it's one thing meeting the regulation, but you know, if we can meet or exceed in some cases, that's what we want to do as well. I mean, so that's part of it. But the other part of this is an antiquated system. And it takes a tremendous amount of resources right now to maintain this antiquated system. So that's the other driver of this. We do have, as the item describes, we do have some various funding sources, but one of the primary funding sources for this is through our federal allocation for state of good repair. Okay, so in addition to all the things that I've said previously, this will also promote, essentially has the potential to promote some lower operating costs for us, because like I said, it takes an enormous amount of resources right now to maintain what we have, because it's just old and antiquated. Does that help?
It does. Thank you.
Ms. Bagley.
Thank you, Chair. Is this going to have like the data improvement elements? Will it trickle down or have any impact on sort of the app or other places where you'd go to see real-time data? I understand this is mostly about the visual displays while you're in the station, but for somebody who's racing to the station or looking to make a connection, would it have any benefits to the related systems, the apps and the online updates?
There's the potential for that, yes. I mean, once we can establish all these different communication paths, the different mobility communication paths, and then it's just essentially repeating it, say, to a VRE mobile or even our website. But that would be relatively the easy part. What we're talking here mainly is the infrastructure part, is the actual monitors and the audio systems and the brackets that hold up, the data cables and the electric.
There are motions to move this item forward.
So move, Madam Chair.
Moved by Supervisor Bailey, seconded by Mr. Alcorn. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? This item passes. Now move into action item 9C, a resolution of support for the Manassas Park application to the I-66 Commuter Choice Program for the Manassas Park VRE Parking Expansion Project. Mr. Dalton?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Seeking the Operations Board to endorse, support an application that's being submitted by the City of Manassas Park to NVTC for the Commuter Choice Program. The city will submit an application for about $2.5 million for the VRE parking expansion project. So again, one of the projects that we have out there is to expand parking at the Manassas Park Station. We've been working collaboratively with the City of Manassas Park and other partners to accomplish this. We do have an agreement with the City of Manassas Park that basically takes the funding that we previously had acquired for construction and caps that at about $24 million. So, and that agreement also states that any cost above that, the City of Manassas Park would. As we've evolved through this project, we did slightly shift a little bit to be able to integrate the parking garage project into a city center development project that the City of Manassas Park has been doing. So the additional cost, if you will, are more in line with what those additions are. And of course, the City of Manassas Park is at the ready to go get that additional funding, and this is a potential source for that. That's my summary now.
Vice Mayor Banks, do you have any comments or want to make the motion?
Sure, I have no comments. I'll make the motion. Thanks, Rich.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Kelly. Any discussion?
I just
Ms.
have a
Bagley?
question.
Yes.
Um, So this is a parking garage that they're proposing, correctly? Or additional parking? But I know in Spotsylvania County, our parking, because ridership has gone down so much, is pretty empty on a regular basis, and we're hoping that that comes back. This is a pretty significant amount of money for this. Is there any view of how that ridership is gonna come up there? Because I don't know if it's different up here than it is in my area. Looking at, you're going to increase parking, ridership has gone down. Is it ever gonna come back up that you're gonna need this additional parking?
Well, Madam Chair, let me just start too. This parking garage also is primarily for commuters, but it's also for the city of Manassas Park. We've been collaborating on this, and this parking garage will also facilitate the other activities in this city center development that the city of Manassas Park is doing. So as far, I think the discussion about, ridership and filling up parking lots and stuff like that, that's obviously going to be an ongoing discussion as we move forward. We are, just so you know, we are in the process of just finishing or moving towards final design on this project. So we haven't actually built anything yet, but we plan to continue to at this point.
Yeah, and I'll just say, I think similarly to the city of Manassas, the VRE station there, after VRE hours, usually doubles for the restaurants kind of in the area, some of the other, dining and commercial options as well. So it does help with the additional space.
It's a very different setup than what Spotsy is.
It's not just a commuter. Ms. Bailey and then Ms. Young.
I just wanted to say to Ms. Hayes, this area is probably, other than Northern Virginia area, that we've been talking about in a robust way. So the need is definitely, Mr. Smith was here, who was then our board member in Manassas, he would say that.
Thank you.
Ms. Young.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I just wanted to know, I think you mentioned there is a collaboration. Can we hear like what the cost is in terms of the collaboration input that they're putting into this funding? Or is this all going, this fund to them?
How much are they?
Well, so throughout not unlike other projects, we set forth to do a project like this. We obviously collaborate with the jurisdiction. Okay, in this case, it's the city of Manassas Park. So we collectively go out and obtain funding, right? So in this case, we had funding for the project that we went and got from NVTA. In addition to that, we received some funding from I-66 outside the Beltway. So that's a funding pot that we collectively went. VRE is we are managing the project, we are leading the project, but we're not doing it without the jurisdiction. But we did recognize that there would be some potential for some additional costs at some point because of the integration into their city center development. So we recognize that, and that was part of our collaborative agreement, was to cap that construction cost. And so that's where we're at now. We've identified what those additional funds are, and the city of Manassas Park is taking the lead to go out and get that incremental funding, which is about $2.5 million.
Basically, there are different funding partners to get the project done, and we're one of the funding partners, and obviously overseeing it because it's under VRE. He's mentioned the city center development. That's part of their revitalization project. And Mr. Banks, I don't know if you want to add to that, but I think I got that correct.
No, it's all correct. I mean, there's different funding streams in VTA, and this is an additional one that's being proposed. And we're just all working together to make this happen. And prior to this, there was a humongous demand for parking. We conducted a parking study that showed the demand for additional parking. We had significant overflow in our current parking lot. And this will meet the needs of our riders that come from all around, from Manassas, Fairfax County, Prince William County, as well as Manassas Park. That's all.
We'll take one more comment from Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, just, I think for the new members, especially those in the southern jurisdictions, it might be a good idea just to give a quick rundown of the fact that there are certain funds that, because Northern Virginia has transportation authority, we've had this problem where we can't spend certain monies if it's going to help us, because the money has to be spent within the Northern Virginia areas, and we're kind of touching on one of those. So, Rich, one quick one on, there certain funds that are limited in where they can be spent.
Yes, I mean, I'll just echo what you just said. So for the, we mentioned one source of funding for this project and others, MVTA. I believe the boundary for that is at some point in Prince William County going north. So for Stafford County, Spotsylvania County, Fredericksburg, the MVTA money is for projects there. But nonetheless, we do have four projects in the Stafford County, Fredericksburg. We've been very successful with smart scale projects. So yeah, there's some limitation there, but we've been able to effectively come up with the funding sources to move forward on a lot of our, not just expansion projects, but we're fortunate to be fully funded with our state of good repair projects as well from our federal partners.
Madam Chair, I just want to point out again for our southern jurisdiction, and I'm not meaning it as a criticism in any way, because Northern Virginia has transportation authorities and funding sources, which allows them to do a lot more leveraging on projects than we can do in the southern jurisdictions. That's kind of the point I wanted to make.
Just to elaborate on that, this funding, the Commuter Choice Program, comes from the total part of I-66. So it's not available to other parts of the state because it comes from.
All right, so we do have a motion on the floor in a second. All in favor? Any opposed? And that motion passes. Now move into item 9D, approval of the 2022 VRE Operations Board meeting schedule. Mr. Dalton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And in accordance with the bylaws, the board is to adopt the meeting schedule, the formal meeting schedule for the Operations Board for calendar year 22. I will just state that the meeting is regularly scheduled on the third Friday of each month, with the exception of August. And so the proposed schedule here is not veer from that basic convention of when the operation schedule is. That's my summary, Madam Chair.
All right, there are motions. Mr. Bailey, is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Alcorn. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
Question. Although we believe in the past, there sometimes is motion, say before another board meeting, to move something. Since I think April 17th might be Good Friday before Easter. Sometimes you might set the schedule, just kind of put it sometimes the month before. I'm correct in thinking that could be one of those that could be. But we've done that in the past, right?
We've had that discussion in the past. I'm
not saying you have to have it here.
Exactly.
We can adopt this. The board is flexible enough to look at instances like that.
All in favor? Any opposed? We will now move to our session item. I'll turn it over to Vice Chair Walkinshaw, but just want to keep track of the time. It's about almost 10:15, so let's be mindful of that and efficient in our closed session. I'll turn it over to Mr. Walkinshaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pursuant to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, move that the VRE Operations Board close meeting for the purpose of discussing one matter involving the acquisition of real property for public purposes, operations, and storage, where discussion in public would adversely affect the bargaining position and negotiation strategy of the commissions. 2, the investment of public funds related to the provision of rail service where competition bargaining is involved, where if made public initially, the financial interests of the commissions be adversely affected. 3rd, consultation with legal counsel concerning the terms and conditions of an agreement for the investment of such public funds.
Madam Chair, just for the record, the resolution that has.
And you seconded, do you want to make the motion? You just read the,
Oh, I thought you said I.
I made a motion.
okay.
Yep, and I think someone
Okay.
seconded.
I said.
Second.
Any discussion? Then we'll do a roll call vote.
Mr. Alcorn?
Aye.
Ms. Bagley?
Aye.
Bailey?
Aye.
Mr. Banks?
Aye.
Ms. Franklin?
Aye.
Ms. Garvey?
Aye.
Ms. Hayes?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Ms. Lawson?
Aye.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Aye.
Mr. Stork?
Aye.
Mr. Walkinshaw?
Aye.
And Ms. Young?
Aye.
It's unanimous, Madam Chair.
And we will now move into closed session.
Give me some bulk.
I think you don't want me uncomfortable.
Happy to go get a plot.
Trust me, you don't want me, I don't drink. You don't want me.
Certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, with no individual dissenting. The just concluded session, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Freedom of Information Act discussed, and only such public business matter as were identified in the motion in which the closed session was convened, heard, discussed, or considered, so moved.
Seconded by Ms. Bailey. Any discussion? All in favor? Roll call vote.
Yes. Mr. Alcorn?
Aye.
Ms. Bagley?
Aye.
Ms. Bailey?
Aye.
Mr. Banks?
Aye.
Ms. Franklin?
Aye.
Ms. Garvey?
Aye.
Ms. Hayes?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Ms. Lawson?
Aye.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Aye.
Mr. Stork?
Aye.
Mr. Walkinshaw?
Aye.
And Ms. Young?
Agreed.
That's unanimous, Madam Chair.
Okay, before we go into item 12, board members' time, we need to go back to item 10 because I forgot to do it. Our spending authority report, Mr. Dalton.
This is an information item that's actually in your packet. It identifies for the month of December, some purchase orders and some task orders that we executed as usual. It's part of your information item package. If there's any questions that you have about it now or after the meeting or anything, just let me know. But just wanted to call that out as part of the regular package.
Okay, we will move back to item 12, board members' times. I'll start with some comments about wanted to recognize Ms. Jennifer Mitchell and the work that she's been doing for VRE and her work obviously with the Commonwealth really has been tremendous and very helpful for the work here on VRE. So one of VRE's strongest supporters, Jennifer Mitchell, joined the operations board in 2014 as the Commonwealth's representative, shortly after being appointed director of the Department of Rail and Public Transportation. Her role in establishing Transforming Rail in Virginia initiative cannot be overstated. She garnered support from a large and diverse group of stakeholders, including VRE's host railroads, and identified the financial resources needed to move ahead with a $3.7 billion program. VRE's ability to sustain and grow its service is directly tied to this decade-long initiative. Jennifer's leadership, the Commonwealth has increased funding for public transportation throughout Virginia, but especially in our region. VRE's dedicated CROC fund, which receives $15 million annually from a regional fuels tax, exists in large part due to her efforts. Increased passenger rail service in Virginia and now intercity bus service are among Jennifer's many accomplishments. VRE owes a debt of thanks to her in years to come when a second Long Bridge opens and a new third and fourth track are in place. VRE and its riders will reap the benefits of the seeds that Jennifer Mitchell has sowed. So with that, I'd like for you to come up and present you with a plaque and a token of our appreciation and to say thank you.
There's,
Oh, awesome.
yeah, you get a. Somebody was gonna take.
It's
Oh, Joseph.
It has really been a pleasure to work with you all, and I'm sure that I will not our way. So to wish you guys all the success. You've got a great leader and everybody on this board as well. So it has been a lot of fun. So I'm not sure what was said before I got in the room, but I'm sticking around for a little while just to help with transition. I may or may not be here next month, but we'll see. So, and there's one person that's not in the room that does not get enough credit for anything. But if you see him, Nick Donahue, who's our deputy secretary, who has been a huge part of the success of transforming rail in Virginia and the funding sources. So should you see him out and about anytime, please give him the thanks that he's due as well. Thank you. Go into board members' times. I'll start with Mr. Walkinshaw. Comments or updates, feel free to give them. If not, feel free to say pass.
Actually, I want to thank you for taking the chair's gavel. And I believe this is the first meeting. Anyway, appreciate you doing that and the other officers.
Thank you. And it's interesting, my sign says Katie Crystal here. Katie's chairing our board now, and she really needed to not be spending time down here. So I will say I may be doing a fair amount virtually, but
And it is a great. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to say welcome to our new members again. This is a very good board to make a difference in the community. Miss Katie, but this is my as well. And great meeting, Madam Chair. Rich, thank you for all that you do. And to my friend, I'm not gonna say we'll miss you, but thank you.
Good to see you again, Madam Chair, without changing my vocabulary.
See you, Dr. Steiner.
On behalf of MVTC, since Kate couldn't be here, we extend obviously the same thanks to Jennifer on behalf of all the work she's done with us as a commission, made the Your Choice program, which we talked a little bit about earlier. So thank you very much from MVTC as well for all of the support. Matt.
I just mentioned I'm doing my orientation tour next Friday. I'm very much looking forward to it and contribute to my ability to participate. So looking forward to that.
And I want to extend my deepest thanks to Jennifer and all the work you've done, not only here, but in so many other areas. Made a real difference in Northern Virginia. The beauty of your job, frankly, is that you look at where you were and then years out can see product neighbors, and that's always a good thing to have a life. See that. Sorry,
getting that Route 1 BRT built.
I'm, you know, I'm right there with that, but more of that is in place. We're moving it forward pretty. Pleased with all that support.
You all for the warm welcome. So for Supervisors Bailey's mentorship so far. I also will be orienting next week, Friday. And I just wanted to let you all know, Ms. Bumpy was not here, but hopefully I stepped in and served Stafford today.
And Ms. Supervisor Lawson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jennifer, it was fun honoring you today, and I certainly hope that you stick around longer than possibly anticipated. And Madam Chair, I want to thank you for stepping up to lead this operations board. You already are off to a great start, so thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Mr. Banks?
Hi, Jennifer, I just want to thank you for your service to the VRE. It was even to the last meeting to this meeting. I mean, it was great. And hopefully you get to stick around. For our new members, welcome. Please take the new member orientation. It's great, and train ride included. That's it.
And before we end, I do need to make note that board secretary position remains open, and I'm appointing Mr. Walkinshaw as the interim secretary for now. And we'll vote on that position at our February meeting. So if there's interest, let me know, and then we'll get moving on that. In interim, Mr. Walkinshaw will serve in that position. Okay, and then just a couple of things. Reminder for our next board meeting, February 18th. And is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hope I see you all again. Thank you.
This is second.